Hey there, I'm Scott the Winemaking Guy, and I'd like to welcome you to episode 4 of Help My Winemaking, the video podcast that helps people like you improve your winemaking savvy so you can make great tasting homemade wine. Alright, well, let's get things going here. On today's show, lots of updates. Of course, update on the wine cellar debacle, a warning about using crystal decanters, as well as some viewer comments on selling your wine. Now, before I get to this whole thing about the wine cellar, I wanted to bring you up to speed on the last 2 weeks, and unfortunately, why I wasn't able to do the episode for last week. Well, first off, we were in Calgary on the Labor Day weekend, first weekend in September, to visit some friends and family, and actually it was fun because got to catch up with some people I hadn't seen in a while. I also get to go to the Calgary Farmers Market, where I stumbled upon, thanks to the help of my father-in-law, Fieldstone fruit wines, and had some taste tests, and they were quite nice. Now, the reason why this is significant is, if you recall from episode 1, I introduced you to a commercial fruit winemaker named Dominic Rivard, and in fact he is the wine master for Fieldstone fruit wines, and so I obviously had to support my friend and bought a couple bottles, so I look forward to trying those out. Also, last week was a bit of unfortunately, I wouldn't say gong show, but it wasn't as great as it could be. First off, my wife Michelle was in the hospital unexpectedly for 4 days due to some complications. Fortunately, it looks like she's going to pull through, and she was released on Friday, but certainly a stressful time for us. And also on Wednesday, if that wasn't bad enough, the alternator and power steering in my car decided to pack it in. So needless to say, it was a stressful week, and so I had to readdress my focus. I only tell you this so you know that there is definitely a human being on the other side of these podcasts, and I guess we take the good with the bad. Anyways, so I just wanted to let you know what was going on there. So let's talk about the wine cellar update. Well, as you recall from episode 3, at the end of recording it, I said that I was going to dig up this part of my house on the outside so that we could fix the holes that were leaking. Now, I could seriously do 2 sessions on all of this foundation repair, but I'm not going to bore you with the details, but I'll kind of show you some of the pictures we did. I can say that it sucked because the ground was hard, lots of roots to deal with, and we had to take this tree out. And my arms were so sore after the first day that even the bones hurt. Now, this is us, my wife Michelle and I celebrating taking out the stump. Lilac bushes are a very hard word, we soon discovered, and it was a lot of work, but we were happy that it's out. And we were also fortunate to get our friends Chantel and Colin to help us out, which helped a great deal. And our dog Jasper was there to provide pep talks, I guess. But everything went well, and I'm glad to say it's done, at least on the outside. So now it becomes the work on the inside, and again we're down right to the wall, and it's a space about 4 by 3 by 8 feet. So looking forward to getting that done and getting the racks put in. So if you have any experience making and building wine cellars, I'd love to hear from you if you have any good tips. So, and we'll of course be updating you as we go on in future podcasts on how that goes. Alright, so a wine safety tip. Now, one of my viewers, Doug Forsyth, passed on a study that was done, an informal study that was done at Health Canada about the dangers of using lead-based crystal glass with decanters and glasses. And this was done by a colleague of his at work. So, Dr. Tony Schuhammer, hopefully I say that right, from Environment Canada, passed on this study that he did. So an employee received a set of leaded crystal wine glasses as a gift and asked me, that's Dr. Tony, if it was safe to drink wine from these glasses. Leaded crystal glasses contain 25% lead by weight, and I suggested an experiment. Put equal volumes of wine in the glasses for various periods of time, bring the samples in, and we'd measure the lead concentrations. So the results. Well, the white wine directly out of the bottle had almost undetectable amounts of lead, and that's 0.1 parts per million. But within half an hour, in a leaded crystal wine glass, the lead concentration had risen to about 0.6 parts per million, and within 24 hours it was 3.4 parts per million. So consuming a single 200 milliliter serving of wine containing 0.6 parts per million of lead would result in a lead intake of 120 micrograms of lead. So the conclusion, now listen to this. If you had 1 glass of such wine per day out of a crystal glass, you'd consume about 840 micrograms of lead per week, which is roughly 5 times the average total allowable weekly dietary lead intake for Canadians, as estimated by Health Canada in the 1990s. And this would be about 160 micrograms. So, in the grand scheme of things, if you were to keep port, brandy, whiskey, or anything else in a leaded crystal decanter for long periods of time, it would likely accumulate much higher levels of lead than the levels we measured. Wow, that's incredible. So if you've got one of these nice crystal decanters that you keep your whiskey or brandy or whatever in a nice cart or in a bar, just consider that if you leave it in there for a long period of time, you could actually be ingesting lead, and that could obviously lead to a bunch of health problems down the road. So very, very interesting stuff, and something to seriously consider if you use lead-based crystal. Now, he did include a link and to further study for a Health Canada website, and rather than read this off to you, I'll just include a link on my blog and you can have a read. So thanks again, Doug, for sending that. I certainly appreciate it, and I'm sure my readers do as well. So now let's talk about the legalities of selling your own wine. I'd sent an email about an article I'd read online from Winemaker Mag, from Alison Crow, who's the wine wizard, and here's some of the comments that, and I'd sent the link to it, to everybody via email last week, and here's some comments that I received. So in Florida, the Pirate says, the first thing you have to have is a storefront, then you have to have the proper license to make wine, and then a license to sell wine. And you can sell to any individual customer from your store, but to sell to a restaurant or a liquor store, you have to go through a distributor. And in Florida, it's also 200 gallons per household. I know only one person that ever did that, and he really had to work at it the last month or two and swore he would never try it again. And Gail passed on some legislation she found for Manitoba and Canada. No person shall have and keep in the person's residence more than 227 liters of homemade beer and 227 liters of homemade wine. So thanks, Gail. Now, the reason why I tell you all this stuff is two things. One is, if you don't plan on selling your wine, but you'd love to make wine or even beer, consider that there are limits to how much you can actually store in your house, because I suppose the government then wonders why you have so much wine in your possession, and if you have too much, based on the area you live in, they might think that you're trying to traffic it or distribute it, and might even assess you taxes. So that's one thing, and of course the other thing is, if you make your own wine and you try to sell it on the sly or on the side without the proper licenses and that type of thing, I'd hate to see you go in jail just because you didn't know about it. So, bottom line is, know what the rules are in wherever part of the world you live in, so that you can keep yourself out of trouble and drinking nice wine. Alright, so enough of that. If you have any tips or comments to share, just like Gail and Doug and the Pirate, please send them to me at tips@helpmywinemaking.com, or reply to any emails received from me, and we'll make sure to pass them on to everyone. Alright, well, that's all the time we have this week. I hope you learned something new, whether it be building wine cellars, or lead content in crystal, or even some rules and regulations out there. Obviously, to get more wine tips, I invite you to find me on Twitter, twitter.com/winemakingguy, or Facebook, fbook.me/winemakingguy, or visit my blog at thewinemakingguy.com. You can also subscribe to this podcast via iTunes. So join me next week, where I will be discussing different ways to gussy up your wine bottle. That'll be sure to impress your guests. Didn't get to it this week, but I thought it would be great to do some updates anyways. Bye for now. Hope you have a great week. Talk to you later.